an individual decided that this guy was a bit of an artist and a bit of a eccentric, and he decided that he was going to decorate his lawn or make his entire lot. This was a single family home HOA. Um, he was going to make his entire lot his canvas, and so what he did was he covered the entire surface of his front lawn with broken glass and had one particular piece of broken glass shaped like a shark's fin, and it was just gigantic. And so the guy's whole lawn was hazardous.
Hello and welcome to the Attorney Post, where we give you the inside scoop with top attorneys in their field. And now, here's our host, Justin West.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Attorney Post, where we discuss what's going on in various facets of the law with attorneys at the top of their game to help you navigate the various ins and outs of legal fields and jurisdictions, because, as I always say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Today, I'm very pleased to be joined by Justin Givens, a guy with an amazing first name. Justin, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty good, Justin. How about yourself?
I am doing good as well. To my listeners and my viewers, well, at least my viewers, listeners, you're not going to notice a thing. Viewers, you will notice there seems to be like a 1 second lag. We tried to fix it with his camera. I don't know what it is. It's a Zoom issue. So if his words and his face aren't quite matching up like an old Godzilla dub movie, just know that that's just a Zoom issue and we can't help that. So before we get started, let's take a jump over and look at his law firm. So Justin is on the masthead of Anderson Givens Fredericks. And Anderson Givens is a Florida-based law firm focused on community association law, real estate transactions, and civil litigation. The firm represents clients across a range of matters, including enforcement actions, contract disputes, and closings. With offices in Tallahassee, they provide personalized legal counsel grounded in experience and results. And as always, if you want to reach out to them, we will put a link to their information down below. AndersonGivens.com is the URL to visit them online. You can see a lot of the different areas that they do. And of course, we're going to dive a lot more into all of that here in a little bit. Before we get started, however, as always, we are going to jump over and take a look at a couple of our sponsors. And our first sponsor today is Habanero Social. What if Google could send you free clients every single month? With Habanero Social, it's not a fantasy, it's a reality. Their AI-powered platform optimizes your Google business profile to attract more local customers and clients effortlessly. From cranking out high-quality content to managing reviews and fine-tuning your local SEO, Habanero Social handles it all while you sit back and watch your business grow. 85% of local searches happen within the Google Maps pack. That's the place you need to be in order to capture those clients. And optimized Google Business Profile doesn't just show up, it engages and builds trust, increases clicks, and ultimately boosts your business and your ROI. They're so confident that it works, they offer a 3 times ROI guarantee, meaning if you don't make at least 3 times what you spend working with them, they'll make it right or refund your money. Stop wasting your time on old school tactics. Visit habanerosocial.com today and automate everything you need to rank higher, engage better, and drive more clients to your business. That is habanerosocial.com. And our second sponsor of the top of the hour is Groove Funnels, which I need to figure out where that went. I have their phone. There we go. Entrepreneurs and dream chasers, listen up. If you're running an online business, it doesn't mean you have to be drowning in subscriptions or wrestling with a messy tech stack. Groove.cm is rolling out a jaw-dropping limited time offer. You can run your entire operation. Think stunning websites with Groove pages, high converting sales funnels, email campaigns, e-commerce stores, even affiliate programs, all completely free for an entire year, no credit card required. That's right. Over 1 million users are already saving thousands and scaling their businesses smarter with this all-in-one platform that replaces brands like ClickFunnels and Shopify and more. And there's no risk and there's no hidden fees, just pure, powerful growth tools to help you focus on what matters most, building your empire. But hurry, this deal won't last forever, so jump right now and see why Groove is the secret weapon for every entrepreneur in 2025. Visit theattorneypost.com/groove to sign up for free for an entire year. Again, completely free, and if you can't make it possible, then you never pay. That's theattorneypost.com/groove. All right. And let me stop my screen share here and jump back over. All right, so again, I am here today with Justin Givens of Anderson Givens Fredericks, and he is a seasoned litigator. Justin has been working real estate. He's a real estate attorney with over 15 years of experience in Florida law. And since the beginning of his legal career in 2008, he has built a reputation for his skill in resolving complex disputes, from covenant enforcement and code violations to construction deficits and land use matters. Justin brings extensive trial experience and a practical, client-focused approach to every case. As a co-founder of Anderson Givens, he also leads the firm's title and closing department, helping clients navigate real estate transactions with confidence. That is a little bit of what we could say about him, but obviously there's a lot more that we could say as well. And I'm sure I barely summed it up. So my very first question is just this, Justin: what did I miss?
I don't think you missed anything. Our firm, we're a full service real estate firm, and yeah, it's we started this firm primarily focusing on the aspects of community association representation, and over time that organically grew into a real estate transactions practice where we're issuing title insurance and handling real estate transactions as an escrow agent. And that's the only other thing that I would say you didn't mention that our firm does, kind of a weird little thing, is we do a lot of collections, and that's based on the fact that we represent about 500 community associations around the state, from one end of Florida to the other. And when you have that many community associations, you have people that aren't paying their homeowners association dues, they're not paying special assessments, things like that. Um, and there's such a volume of delinquency there that eventually we had to have another office, which is our Sarasota office, that focuses primarily on those collections efforts. And so that's kind of the only aspect of the law firm that you didn't mention.
Well, there you go. Well, let me throw the ball in your court a minute then. So if I didn't know anything about you, and maybe you and I were in an elevator, we got 30 seconds as we're going up, and I said, hey, Justin, what do you do? Give me a pitch for your firm. Like, tell me who specifically you do help. I mean, obviously you do a lot of different things, but why do people come to you guys? What do they find, and what services all do you provide across the board? Give us your pitch.
So, yeah, so I mean, pretty much if it's real estate, we do it. Again, I head up the title side, so real estate transactions, I work with realtors, buyers, sellers, lenders, anyone who's buying or selling a home, whether it's just in the ordering the title search and complying with the commitment that comes back, and then issuing the title insurance policy, functioning as escrow agent, a transaction, all the way to contractual issues, weird little things with land use, easements, probate issues. There's about 1,000 different things that can derail a real estate transaction. And our job as a law firm is to try to help everyone involved in a transaction to deal with those issues and get it across the finish line. And then on the community association side, these community associations in Florida are set up either under Florida Statute 720 if it's a homeowners association, or Florida Statute 718 if it's a condominium association. Those two statutes are very similar. They mirror each other in most ways. But the associations themselves have a board of directors, and the board of directors is like the real client for the firm. And these associations are required by law to exist. They're required by law to do business. They can't pick up and move. So they're a corporate client that we help navigate all sorts of things from their documents, what provisions are in their documents, to enforcements of the covenants. What are we going to do when you're doing something crazy with your property? To vendor contracts, construction contracts. Again, it just goes on and on and on. So it's a very all-encompassing kind of representation. And on the community association side, we're doing that from Naples to Panama City Beach and all points in between. And that side just continues to grow.
Gotcha. So what got you into law? Were you one of those kids that grew up watching Perry Mason reruns and just like, I want to do law? Or was this kind of something you fell into accidentally? And then what got you into real estate law? It seems like an interesting branch that I feel like a lot of people don't just go out and say, I want to get into real estate law, but maybe some people do.
Yeah, so for me, I think I always knew I wanted to be a lawyer when I was a kid, even before I had a clear understanding of what being a lawyer actually was. I don't know why, I don't know where that came from. I was the first person in my family to even go to college. So it was something that I thought I always wanted to do. Most of what I knew about it came from television. Um, so went to law school, had no intentions whatsoever of becoming a real estate lawyer. Um, like most people that I think go to law school, you sort of have this preconceived notion about what the law is. And then when you get to law school, they burst your bubble pretty quickly. And for most people who don't have experience in the law, and by that I mean, like your parents weren't lawyers or something like that, where you got kind of an inside look. It changed my view of the profession and what it was in real life by the end of the first year. I thought when I went to law school, I thought I wanted to be a environmental lawyer. And I thought that meant that I was going to be saving the environment, saving the whales, that whole thing. And what I found out pretty quickly was that environmental law, that's not what environmental law looks like. Environmental law tends to be much more focused on the development side. Most environmental lawyers, they either work for developers who are trying to, build residential or commercial, or they tend to work for the government, um, which is, much more statutorily driven, and you're not out there with Greenpeace and the boats, doing all these exciting things. You're stuck at a desk, pushing papers around. And so I figured that wasn't what I wanted to do, and then I was just kind of like, well, I don't know what the plan is. Let me just see if I can make it through law school. I came out. I went to work originally for the public defender's office. And I did not ever think that I was going to go into criminal law at all. But that's where I got my start. And it ended up being a blessing in disguise because what it got me is a lot of litigation and trial experience. And I always say if you can do criminal trials, you can do anything in the law. So I did that for about a year. And then one day there was sort of a office-wide meeting. This was quite a large PD's office, several hundred people working in it, and the governor had announced budget cuts, and it was sort of a last hired, first fired sort of situation. And me and several other people who were brought aboard the same time I was in the last year were basically told, we're gonna have to lay you off, and we'll call you back, when we've got some money to pay you with. They asked me if I wanted to stay on and work for free for a while because I'd been doing a lot of trial work and had been pretty successful. And I actually did for a few months work for free, but those student loan payments came due, and I needed to go out and start doing something. I started working for myself. Um, I had been putting in resumes to go to work for the state. I was like, well, I'd like to go work for DEP. Maybe that's Department of Environmental Protection. And I thought, well, this will kind of get me back to my environmental law interest that I originally had when I started. But again, these budget cuts were going on and there was a hiring freeze. So I kept going for these interviews and they were like, well, we really like your resume, but unfortunately, we can't hire you. And I kept going to interview after interview that was going that way. And till finally my wife, my at the time fiance, who I was living with, was like, "Hey, aren't you getting all these calls from people that you know and went to high school with, where they're getting like arrested and getting divorced and getting foreclosed on, and maybe you should start taking their case." I wasn't taking their cases because I was saying, "Well, I'm gonna go start working for the state, and I can't take your case. I'd like to, but I don't want to get started and then have to take this government job and withdraw." And eventually I was like, yeah, I need to make some money. I'm going to start taking some of these cases. So I did. And I ended up doing that for about 5 years as the law office of Justin Givens, doing what we call threshold law, just everything that comes across threshold, everything under the sun, focused primarily on, at that time, criminal defense and family law litigation. And so that's what I did. And real estate thing happened completely by accident. Never thought I'd get into real estate. I had been going for about 5 years on my own, and I was in court almost every day. Was liking what I was doing okay, but I had kind of plateaued a little bit. I was a one man um, sort of outfit, practicing in various counties in North Florida, and um, was kind of starting to look at the next thing. I was trying to start to think in terms of like, well, is this as big as it's going to get? Do I need to think about doing something else? I don't know. Met my law partner, Jeremy Anderson, through a mutual friend. I was part of a business networking group here in town, and this guy introduced us. Jeremy was his fraternity brother in undergrad, and this guy and I were close friends, and our wives were close friends. And I guess this guy had been kind of telling me about Jeremy for a couple of years, and telling Jeremy about me for a couple of years. Jeremy was down in Sarasota, had been down in Sarasota since he graduated. He went right to work for a condo HOA firm, a community association firm, and that's all they did. And so that's kind of the only area of the law that he'd ever practiced in. He was down there doing pretty well, had a good job. He married a girl from up here though, and she wanted to move back up here, and so they did. He moved back up here and started a firm with another guy that wasn't working out, and he called me on the phone one day and said, "Hey, what do you think about starting a real estate firm?" And by this point, I had known Jeremy for about a year. We met at Florida State football games and had, hung out at tailgates and stuff like that, which is a great way to really get to know somebody.
True.
And I said, "Yeah, let's do it." By that point, I understood enough about the way that a community association law practice worked, and I saw the scalability of the thing. And so we started our law firm on my kitchen table. My wife had just had our second child. We had just got back from the hospital, and we filed the paperwork right there, and got started with two clients and built it over time from there.
Awesome. And now you guys are the unstoppable juggernaut. Now there's a third name on the masthead too. Where does Frederick's
That's DJ Fredericks. DJ heads up our Sarasota office.
Okay.
So Jeremy and I had been going for about 5 years, and the snowball of community association clients was getting bigger and bigger. And we kind of, even though our office was in Tallahassee, in the beginning we had more clients down in Sarasota because that's where Jeremy had come from professionally, and so he knew a lot of the community management companies down there, and was able to go back and get a lot of those clients. And as the firm grew and the collections portion of it grew, we kind of realized we need to bring in a partner who can focus on the collections aspect of it, because it's the collection side is very labor intensive,
Hmm.
and you've got to set up kind of a mill for the collections to make it work. And so since we already had the office in Tallahassee, we said, well, let's put it down in Sarasota. Jeremy had known DJ for years. And by this point, I knew DJ, and we'd all three become friends. And so it just kind of happened organically. It was just sort of a natural outgrowth that was bound to happen. So we became Anderson, Givens, and Fredericks, opened up the Sarasota office, and that's who we are today.
And the rest is history. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so you've been practicing law for a while. You practiced in multiple facets of the law, everything from criminal defense to, at least a little investigative environmental law to, now real estate and HOA. And obviously, you know, you step up to bat enough, you don't bat 1,000. Everybody fails at some point. And one of the things I found is failure is only a failure if you refuse to learn from it. But if you do learn from it, it's really just a slow burn win. Justin, can you let my listeners know about a time in your practice of law that you failed? Maybe a case was decided the wrong way, maybe back when you're doing criminal law, or decided against you at least. Or maybe it was just a I can't believe we did this, but we filed the wrong paperwork or something along those lines. But what's one of the times in your practice of law where you experienced a failure, but what did you learn from it, and how do you carry that forward to make sure you're always giving the best care to your clients?
Well, in our space, I think the toughest thing to manage is the client because we our clients are boards of directors, and there's all sorts of personalities in those rooms. A lot of people get on these boards, they have agendas, a lot of type A personalities, and every now and then you might get a weirdo or two on a board. Um, there has been, when I look at things that I would consider to be failures, it would be times when I was not able to um, convince a client, which is just say a board of directors, of a course of action that we felt like they needed to take, and it led to negative consequences. And that's not like an I told you so sort of thing. It's more of like you look back and you think, what could I have done to make them to make them understand the seriousness of that situation? We've got a situation right now with a construction case where we drafted a contract for the client to build a seawall. And I had reservations about the contractor that was chosen, and I expressed my reservations to the client. And it was nothing against the guy personally. I had reservations about the size of his company. And when you go to take on a major construction project, this is going to sound unfair or whatever, but it doesn't make it less true. You want to hire a big boy. You want to hire a big company that's
Yep.
got the resources to do the job. Um, the job in question was an extremely large project, and the company was not a large company. And I explained to them, I don't think this is the right guy. I'm afraid this is not going to go well. Started out okay, but the guy just kind of ghosted him. And now the association is out a significant amount of money, and they're back to square one with trying to get their seawall repaired. Now we're reaching out to this individual, and hopefully he's going to resurface, but I am hearing and seeing through the grapevine that there's other people that are now pretty upset with him. Lawsuits that have been filed. I've spoken to some other attorneys around the state. This seems to be happening in multiple places, and I can't say for sure that the allegations are true, but I'm just saying what I've heard, having talking to other people and what I observe in my own case. And yeah, I wish I could have gone back in time and done a better job of convincing that client that this is really not the person that is right for this project. And I don't know if I could have done that or not, but there's been times before where like I say, I look back and I go, golly, I mean, could I have done one more meeting with this board? Could I have made some kind of, visual display? I mean, what could I have done?
Yeah. No, it's rough, but I feel like there's an old saying. Maybe it's you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, or you can lead a client to the truth, but you can't make him think, or
Right, right.
something along those lines. Well, it's rough, but it is what it is, and obviously you can only do so much. So the flip side of that coin, though, is yeah, everybody fails sometimes, but I'm sure you've had some great successes and some great wins. What is one or two of the things in your legal career, Justin, that you're most proud of? Things that proverbial feathers in your cap. When you're falling asleep at night, you think back and you're like, man, I'm so glad that worked out that way, or man, that was so great, or I couldn't believe things all panned out the way they did. What's one or two of the things you're most proud of in your practice?
Um, on the real estate side, I hate to say it, but it's not the most exciting area of the law by most people's standards. Most of the community association stuff is, nothing movie worthy there. It's, community associations with expired documents, and come to find out that they don't have any legal authority to do anything, and we've got them resurrected and back up and running again. I've helped business owners sell properties and negotiated long contractual deals where they had a chance to, um, for instance, I've got one client who owns some auto dealerships here in Tallahassee, and his businesses happen to be located closely to Florida State University, and they wanted to acquire this property, but to be because the school it's a large school and just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and they needed the land, and um, they we negotiated a deal that for him was generational type of wealth, and he never anticipated that his little auto repair shop that he was running would ever lead to anything like that. But we were able to put that deal for him together, it was those were long, long roads. But if I was to think about something that I was the most proud of, I would say it would probably go back to probably a criminal defense case that I had about 10 years ago at the very end of my practice of criminal defense law. It's not very often as a criminal defense attorney that you have an innocent client. I'd say 99.9% of the time I knew my client was guilty.
Mhm.
And you're just kind of, I mean, everyone's entitled to a defense
Yeah.
under American law. So that's kind of the way you approach it. And it's, the burden's on the government to prove your client's guilty. And if they can't do it, then your client walks. And I won a lot more trials than I lost. Um, but I had a client who was innocent one time, who was verifiably innocent. She was a nurse who was working in a very large scale psychiatric hospital here in the state. And uh, there was a patient at the hospital who was pregnant and she lost her baby.
Mhm.
And somehow, inexplicably, the nurse who had had little to no contact with this patient was charged criminally with various charges, but what essentially boiled down to criminal neglect for this woman having lost her baby. Uh, but the nurse had less than 5 minutes of contact with the patient total. And it appeared to be more of like a political witch hunt kind of thing.
Mhm.
Somebody's got to pay, there's got to be a sacrificial lamb sort of thing. And so they went after the person who was lowest on the totem pole, didn't go after any of the doctors, any of the people that put her there, any of the people that, was actually over the care of this patient. Um, Tried everything we could do to talk the state attorney's office out of trying to criminally prosecute this person. They would not do it. So we understood that we were going to have to take this case to trial. And it's a really scary thing when you realize that you're actually defending a person who's actually innocent. Because, if you lose the trial and the guy that is guilty goes to jail, that's one thing. You did the best you could for him, but at the end of the day, maybe justice was served.
Yeah.
But when you're defending someone who is actually innocent, that's terrifying. Because if you lose and that person goes to jail, goes to prison, that would be much harder to live with. And so we had a 2 week trial in that case. We were able to line up all the treating physicians, which there were 3 or 4. I can't remember the exact number now, who were involved in the case. We brought in our own experts, medical doctors, gynecologists, OBGYNs, the whole gambit. And they all testified that there was absolutely no way in the world that anything she did or any contact she had with that patient could have caused the pregnancy to not go well, the birth to not go well. And jury was out in that case for after a 2 week trial. The jury was out for 9 minutes and came back and it was not guilty. Um, that was the shortest amount of time I ever saw a jury out in my entire career. But that 9 minutes was an eternity standing in the parking lot of the courthouse. Thinking we were going to be out there all day or for multiple days waiting for this jury to come back. And that to me was, for that woman who had been living in fear of going to prison for, I mean, years, you know, that was quite a day for us.
Wow. That's awesome. Congratulations on that win. That's
Appreciate it.
That's pretty phenomenal. Yeah, 9 minutes. You barely have time to step outside and catch your breath, and they're already calling you back in. So I'm assuming when you heard they were coming back that quickly, you were feeling hopefully pretty good.
Yeah, I mean,
Or were
when
you?
the jury comes back that quickly, it's in the verdict's going to be innocent, 99
Yeah.
times out of 100. The judge just means the jury at some point in the trial had heard enough, pretty much already came to their decision. They're going back into the jury room, they're selecting a foreman, and then they're saying, does anybody have any doubts whatsoever about this case? And then they all say no, and then they're immediately walking back into the courtroom. And that's when it's that quick, it's usually an innocent verdict.
Gotcha. Well, that's awesome. That's phenomenal. So congrats on that. This might be tangentially related to either that story or the story of, trying to help an association, understand what they should be doing and seeing them not do it. But what's one of the most absurd things that you've encountered in your practice of law? And I find attorneys in one particular field sometimes have a whole host of stories. I talk with a lot of PI attorneys, and they'll just come up with the craziest stories. But I mean, and they're life and death stories, they're traumatic injuries and everything else. But sometimes there's still just absolute absurdities. But I'm sure, especially since you've had such an interestingly varied career, you've dabbled in a number of fields. You've probably encountered some absurdities here and there, maybe in criminal law, maybe in real estate. But what's one of the most absurd things in your practice of law that you've encountered?
You know, that is one thing about community association work is that everyone thinks that it must be boring all the time. But in fact, what I've learned is that people do really weird stuff with their property. And that becomes an issue for community associations on the enforcement side. And so we've had some cases over the years where people did some bizarre things. Um, I think the one that probably jumps out to me as being the strangest that I ever saw. We had a association down in Sarasota that an individual decided that this guy was a bit of an artist and a bit of a eccentric, and he decided that he was going to decorate his lawn or make his entire lot. This was a single family home HOA. Um, he was going to make his entire lot his canvas, and so what he did was he covered the entire surface of his front lawn with broken glass and had one particular piece of broken glass shaped like a shark's fin, and it was just gigantic. And so the guy's whole lawn was hazardous. The guy's whole lawn was dank. I mean, there was kids in this neighborhood, riding their bikes, playing ball in the street, whatsoever. And here's this guy's lawn that's, every time the wind blows, it's theoretically blowing glass out and broken glass out into the street. Not to mention the fact if anybody, some kid was to walk in this guy's lawn. And what he was trying to do was he was trying to achieve this effect where his lawn looked like the ocean, and this big shark fin was like a shark's fin swimming through the ocean. And it did kind of look like that, but you can't, in a single family home HOA, you can't cover your entire lawn with broken glass, and that was probably the craziest thing I've ever saw. We've had people. I've been to meetings, community association meetings that got pretty testy. I've been in rooms where there was 500 people in there, and half of them were wearing red t-shirts and half of them wearing green t-shirts. People get really, really fired up about issues in their associations, and we've had people where we had to get law enforcement involved. We've had associations where there was crazy people in the neighborhood, and it took us forever to solve that issue and get them thrown in jail. I mean, it just, we've said you could do. Jeremy and I, my law partner, said, you could do a show, a sitcom like something like The Office style sitcom about HOA condo law, just following the attorneys around. And the whole basis of the show could be some of it you're in the office and some of it you're going to these meetings, and at these meetings you're seeing these crazy people, and people would just be, but it could be the real stories of the things that really happened. It's just, yeah, it never gets boring.
That's funny. Because I mean, in all honesty, it sounds boring to me. It really sounds like something just like, oh,
Mm,
you're looking at, like property line disputes and things like
mhm.
that. But no, it's you're dealing with the reality of humanity, and people are very passionate about their family and where they live. And so yeah, it would make sense that sometimes you deal with some very passionate cases. Now, I did a quick Google search while you were giving me that first story. I couldn't find any pictures of the broken glass lawn. But if anyone has any pictures, feel free to share it down in the comments because I would love to be able to see it. I'm sure it looked really neat. And
I'll see if I can dig one up. We eventually got all that removed, but
okay,
yeah, I'll see if we have one.
if you do, send it to me. And what I might even do is I'll have my editor throw it in post so we can see it there or something because it sounds intriguing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I usually start these episodes with a bumper, and I'm always trying to figure out like what's a good story. And as soon as you're like this guy covered his whole lawn in broken glass, I'm like, okay, that's clearly going to be the unique hook to jump into this. So there we go. Now you guys know the resolution of that story. Anyway, so you do a lot of work in real estate closings yourself. You kind of handle that aspect of Anderson Gibbons. What I'm sure everyone can, but that seems to be an area that you really focus on. What's one of the biggest mistakes that buyers make or sellers make before a closing begins, or what's something that you're always trying to like prevent people from stumbling into, an error that they're often making, or a misgiving that they bring into your office?
Well, I'm not sure there's any particularly one thing. I mean, I always have nervousness when people are trying to do for sale by owner type situations, or when buyers are out there without a real estate agent. Um, you know, Real estate agents are basically consultants at the end of the day that are experts in their field, and people. Real estate transactions are the most complicated business deal that most lay people will ever engage in. And what happens is they get involved in these things and they figure out pretty quickly that they don't understand what's going on. They don't understand the language that's being spoken. They don't understand contracts, of course. I mean, why would they if they're not a lawyer? And they can get themselves in trouble pretty quickly. These contracts have very specific timelines with obligations that need to be met by both sides, and you're not required to use a real estate agent in a real estate transaction, but you're not relieved of your duties contractually to comply with your obligations under the contract just because you chose not to use a real estate agent.
Hmm.
Um, uh, One thing that's kind of a pet peeve of mine is a law firm that does do real estate closings that and does issue title insurances. We have two types of organizations in the state of Florida that handle real estate transactions. We have law firms that do it, and then we have title companies that do it. And what a lot of people don't understand is that a law firm can be a title company, but a title company can't be a law firm. And where that matters is when you go to a title company, they can't legally do a lot of the things that a law firm can do. They can't solve a lot of the problems that a law firm can solve. They're approaching the transaction more from the standpoint of they're selling an insurance policy. But when you buy a piece of real estate, you as the buyer, as the consumer, you're not buying a real estate. Yeah, but you're not buying an insurance policy. You're buying a house that you intend to live in. And so what a lot of these title companies do is they come upon these legal problems that they can't fix, and they've got a choice. They can either send it down the street to the law firm. Now you're paying the law firm extra money. Why didn't I just go with these guys to begin with? Or they'll just close over it, which means they'll close the transaction knowing there's a problem and just kind of deal with it later when it comes up years down the road, or hope that it never does. A lot of states, and about half the states in the country, title companies are actually illegal, because they've long since determined that a title company is basically practicing law, no matter what they want to say. When you're serving as escrow agent in a real estate transaction, when you're ordering a title commitment and satisfying all the the um, the requirements on that policy for title insurance to be issued, well, those are legal requirements. So they're practicing law under the guise of selling insurance.
Hmm.
And I always tell people, doing closings at a title company is like buying your family's groceries at a gas station. You can get some food there, but you don't want to be trying to feed your family out of there. They don't have everything you need, and it's just not a good idea. So that's something that I wish a lot more people understood is that they should be, when they're handling or when they're in a real estate transaction, when they're buying real estate, they should really use a law firm and not a title company.
That makes sense. This is kind of a related question, but what role does your firm play in helping prevent disputes after the deal is done? And how do you educate your clients, especially if they're first-time buyers, on what to expect?
Well, as escrow agent, we can only get so involved. So we're supposed to be kind of the neutral third party. Now, there are instances where we are hired by a buyer who wants us to draft a contract, and we specifically represent that buyer. There are instances when we're hired by a seller and they want us to draft a contract and we represent the seller. And then at the beginning of the transaction, we let both parties know, hey, we are not a neutral third party. We're representing either the buyer or the seller in this transaction. And usually it doesn't matter. But most of the time, the huge majority of the time, we're a neutral third party. And what we're doing, the way the process generally seems to work is the realtor brings in a contract and an earnest money deposit, and then we order a title search. And that title search is sort of like your diagnostic of the property. It gives the whole history of the property. It's looking for things like mortgages and judgment liens and boundary disputes, easements. Is there a probate problem? I mean, just an infinite number of things. And then what happens is a commitment comes back. And on that commitment, there's a list of requirements that need to be satisfied for the title insurer. This is the national insurance company to issue the title insurance policy to the buyer as they're insured. And so we go down the list of the commitment and make sure that these things are satisfied, that we're checking off everything on this list. And then there's a list of exceptions, as is the case with any insurance policy you've ever seen in your life, things that are not covered. Title insurance covers you for everything up to the date of closing, everything up to the actual real estate transaction itself. It doesn't cover things after closing. It also doesn't cover things that may be wrong with the house, construction defects type of issue. So if you move in there and oops, your roof is defective, that's not a basis for a title insurance claim. So we try to educate people on that stuff the best we can. We send out information at the beginning of the real estate transaction in the form of buyer's letters and seller's letters, and here's what we do. And security is a big deal. These days, wire fraud is so rampant. It's just endemic in our industry. Law firms and title companies are really targeted now. What they try to do is worm their way. The scammers try to worm their way into the email chains, and on the day of closing, they're sending you an email and they're saying, "Hey, the wiring instructions have changed. Here's where we need you to wire the money." And then you wired your money to China or whatever. We provide.
How do they know to send that to you at the right time in the right place?
So it kind of changes, and these schemes can work in different ways. But these days, a lot of it is AI. AI is monitoring millions of emails and waiting for someone to mention something about making large transfers of money. And for most people, that's going to be in a real estate transaction. And then what they do is they get into your email and they begin to impersonate someone else in the transaction. And then they send you a fake set of wiring instructions. And so you've now inadvertently wired your money to the wrong place. And once it's wired out, usually you can't get it back. Now, I have seen some people that were able to get it back. The banks got involved immediately and were able to get it back, but usually unfortunately, it's gone.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I assume that's just only going to get worse
Oh,
as time
it's
goes on.
become one of the number one forms of fraud in the world. It's a
Wow.
worldwide problem. Yeah, it's one of the fastest rising crimes there are, and it's just going to be it's going to be some person on a computer in China or Russia or somewhere like that, and they're ripping off. I don't know how many people a day, but multiple people a day. And this is as big of a problem now in the world of crime and fraud as anything that's going.
How do you
I
protect
wish
against that?
it's really hard. I don't think that there's any foolproof system. What we do is when we send out our wiring instructions, I mean, we reach out to the parties very early and we say, "This is us. There is we have a big stop sign on out like a literal stop sign on the paperwork that you received at the beginning of the transactions that says we will never change your wiring instructions via email or phone call or anything. Here's our wiring instructions, and the last four digits have X's over them. And then you have to call our office to get the last four digits of the of our trust account where you're going to wire your money into. And we try to keep people informed throughout the process, and we have security software that we use. We have a really good IT company that's just monitoring our servers constantly, day and night, and you know, all sorts of security features that are built in that's over my pay grade to really explain, but still things happen. If they can get to that buyer, if they can get to that, seller, somebody in the transaction, and convince them that they're talking to the right person, and then they transfer that money to the fraudsters, it's gone, and it's just becoming a bigger and bigger and bigger problem.
Yeah. Wow. That's something I wasn't aware of. And we in the midst of the big economic downturn and COVID and everything else, we were able to buy our house. Unfortunately, I think it all went smoothly enough, other than our real estate company actually lost all of our paperwork. And like the morning of, I think it was my stepfather's funeral, I got this phone call and they're like, no, actually, no, I dropped my wife off at the airport so she could go fly out for a weekend to go see her family. She had her half brother was getting married. And as I'm pulling away from the airport, I get a call from my real estate company, like, we don't have your paperwork. You're not going to get a house. Meanwhile, we had other people buying the house that we were in, and it was a big hullabaloo. But I mean, we got it resolved over the weekend, and things worked out fine. But that would be totally different. Like if all your money is just gone, you've wired it, and somebody else has it, and you can't get it back. Like
Yeah.
that's gonna sink somebody financially too. Like that, you go from about to buy a house and everything's looking bright and rosy to almost facing, I'm sure for some people, financial destitution
Yeah,
instantly. Like,
yeah, it could ruin you. I mean, you're for some of these people, they have lost an amount of money that's going to set them back a decade
yeah,
financially. I mean, for most people cannot absorb a six-figure financial hit and
no,
and just be okay.
yeah. Well, unless they know a Nigerian prince, because I'm told that those guys just have, money out the wazoo. So
That's right.
I
That's
get
right.
one that emails me all the time, and he just keeps telling me my check is in the mail. So we'll see when that comes. That's a
Hmm.
joke for everyone out there. So don't.
Yeah. God's sakes,
There
do
was
not engage with those people.
There was a news story I heard about a year ago, and it was funny because there was like a wealthy guy in Nigeria that passed away, and that's not the funny part. But like they went into his home, and there's just stacks of cash. Everyone like, no, this guy was real. This was the Nigerian prince who kept trying to send you all the money, and nobody ever accepted his email. So it is what it is. But yeah, do be careful out there, everybody. Like take that, always consult an attorney, figure out some checks and balances. I think calling and getting the numbers, like always making sure like you're on the phone and saying, and this is the correct account and this is where we're wiring it, and be very, very cautious out there because that's terrifying. I'm glad to be aware of this even being a thing because whenever we do move on to a new house, I will definitely be mindful of things like that, and definitely want to have someone on my side who can go to bat for me and knows what to look for. So you deal with a lot of HOA stuff. I have always been anti HOA. Just the idea of not being able to do what I want to do with my house drives me nuts. Now, of course, I live in a city, and there's still laws that regulate what I can and can't do. Some cities will say you can't do X with your front yard or your backyard, or you can't have chickens, or you can't collect rainwater, or there's all sorts of laws that are out there. What advice would you give to somebody when they're buying a property in a community that's governed by an HOA or a condo association in order to make sure that they're not going to be stepping into friction? And I mean, I'm sure, again, I said I'm anti-HOA because I don't like people telling me what I can and can't do. But obviously, there's benefits to it as well. For instance, if somebody has their whole front lawn covered in glass, you
Right.
know, um, there are benefits as well. So what advice would you give to somebody that's looking to buy a property and navigating the ins and outs of dealing with the HOA or association or whatever?
So I think a really simple thing and an important thing that people can do is when they are looking at property to buy, residential property to buy, you want to pull a copy of the governing documents. So if that house is in a homeowners association, a subdivision, or if it's a condominium, you pull the condominium documents. These documents are recorded. They're recorded in the public records of the county where the property is located. Okay. You want to pull in Florida, we call it the declaration. That's like your neighborhood's constitution. Okay. You want to pull that document. You want to look in the section that's called, usually it's called restrictions. And this is the section that says you can't do this, you can't do that. You can't have a lime green colored house, you can't own chickens, you can't blah, 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 blah. They can put nearly anything they want to in there so long as it's not in violation of the law. I would say that when a person is looking to purchase property very early, you want to get a copy of those covenants and restrictions. Take a look at them, see what's in there. I know I've seen cases in the past, and here's where my two areas of practice kind of cross-pollinate. I was involved in a transaction where a buyer bought a piece of property, and their intention was that they were going to raise pigs and goats. Well, come to find out on the back end after the transaction was complete that there was a restriction in the community that you couldn't have hoofed animals there. You know, so they were obviously, well, they were very upset at their real estate agent because what they said was, we told our agent from the very beginning that this was our intention, this is what we wanted to do. And that's true. And so that didn't go well. But as a buyer, I think that you can hit a lot of that off if you educate yourself on what restrictions are in the governing documents before you close on the property. And I would say even, if you know you're interested in a property before you even send over a contract for purchase, make sure there's not something in those restrictions that you can't live with, because those restrictions are there. They run with the land, as we say. A lot of people will call my office and they'll say, I didn't sign a contract at my closing that said I agreed to this term. And we tell them, well, actually it doesn't matter because every lot in the association is subject to the declaration. So you don't have to opt into this. You automatically opt in by purchasing. That law is well settled. So that's a shock to a lot of people. But it's out there and it's a real thing.
And there really is no help. I mean, if you can say it that way, if you find yourself in the situation, you're in that situation. There's no real getting out of it. Or do people ever successfully fight back? Is it a thing that happens, or is it a, well, sorry, that was the law of the land and you signed into it?
The in Florida, the statutes are definitely written in favor of the community associations. Now, our firm, while we typically represent the association, we have represented individuals in the past, and we have prevailed. Where because what happens on the other side of the coin is you get some boards of directors who are a little overzealous, and they are trying to enforce restrictions that are not actually found in the covenants and restrictions, or they're trying to stretch them farther than they actually go. And there is where the individual homeowner can prevail. And we've helped some people to do that in the past. More often than not, the association wins. But yeah, there are instances when they're trying to enforce a restriction on people that they're not legally entitled to. And in that instance, the homeowner can win.
Well, I guess there's always hope. Well, Justin, we've already been talking for almost an hour, and I really do appreciate the time you give me. I don't want to take up your whole morning. I know you've got a hard stop coming up at the end of the next hour here. So here in a minute, I'm probably going to wind down our conversation. I'm going to ask you my three closing questions. I always like to give those to you in advance so you can percolate on them, then we'll jump back over and take a look at your site. Question number one is going to be, if you can wave a magic wand and change something about your practice, how it operates, what's going on, what would you change about your practice currently? Number two is, if you can go back in time, meet young Justin and give him some great advice without breaking the space-time continuum. What advice would you give yourself and why, other than the obvious? Again, buy a lot of Bitcoin, hold it to 100K. And number three is, I gave you my magic pen, and with this magic pen, you could strike a law from the books, edit a law in the books, or alter or add a new law in the books. What law would you change and why? While you're percolating on that, we're going to jump back over and take a look at your site. I am talking with Justin Givens. He is on the mastheads over here at Anderson Givens Fredericks. As always, you can find them online at andersongivens.com. We will have a link down below in the description. I think we'll have their phone number down there too if they have a phone number online. we'll get it figured out there. I don't see it on the website, but I'm sure it's on there somewhere. So it's probably on the contact us page. But we'll have all of that information down below for you guys. We'll have a link to their Google profile and everything else. So you can look them up. And obviously, if you need help with real estate law, you're in the Florida area, down near Tallahassee or Sarasota, anywhere in the state of Florida, it seems like they would be a wonderful resource for you. So we're going to put all their information down below. Our last sponsor for today is Rank with News, which is right here. Is not being found in the news regularly costing your firm or your company credibility and visibility? Do you feel that getting found in Google search is more about dumb luck than science? What if there was a guaranteed way to get your law firm or your business featured in major national publications like Yahoo News, Bloomberg, Reuters, AP News, etc., and see those articles rank locally, nationally, sometimes in under 8 hours for major competitive keywords that people were actually looking for? What else would you need to know? Rank with News is simply the most powerful way to hit page one in under 2 weeks safely, organically, and sometimes quite permanently. It's basically guaranteed SEO or search engine optimization on steroids, ranking quickly and sticking long term. If you're tired of poor visibility for your business or firm, visit rankwith.news or rankwithnews.com to learn more and book a time to speak with a specialist about featuring your firm or your business in major national 8 and 9-figure traffic sites that can launch you to page one in a matter of hours, help you dominate your local marketplace, and build credibility. Get media exposure, rank higher in Google, build credibility, and win more customers and clients with rankwith.news. Alrighty. So, question number one. I have a magic wand and I toss it over to you. And with that magic wand, you can change one thing about your firm. It could be a major thing. You guys add a whole new division. It could be a minor thing. It could be you're able to get more clients coming in the door yourself. What's the one thing you would change about your firm if you could change something right now?
Well, I think the thing that we're really looking at right now is scalability.
Mhm.
How do we grow the law firm? Our ultimate goal is to have a branch of our law firm, all over Florida and in any city that's got any size. And when I first started doing this, I thought that the problem with that would be finding the clients. Turns out that's not the case. What's hard is finding the person that can run that office. The person that's going to be, not only loyal to you, but also is going to come to work every day and is accountable for their work and somebody that you can trust and works well with other people. I wish that I could find more people like that, and the search continues to open up offices in other parts of the state because our firm lends itself to that, to being able to put offices in different cities. But yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. Is that like an office manager style? Is that like an attorney that can be on the masthead style? Like what would you be looking for in
Well,
situations?
you've got to have an attorney at the top of the pyramid, and then you've got to fill it out with staff. But you've got to have a lawyer who can, in our space at least, that person's got to understand that we can feed you enough business to keep you going, and so you're paying for yourself. But what you've got to be able to do is you've got to be able to go out there and network, and you've got to be able to build the local clientele in your area. And I find that that's what a lot of people don't understand now is the networking aspect. But running a law firm is not just you hang out a shingle and sit there at the desk reading a newspaper until clients walk in the door. People can't send you business if they don't know who you are. And most people want to do business with people that they know and they're friends with. And in the legal profession, I find that to be much more true. Everybody wants to think that their lawyer is their buddy. Everybody wants to think that they've got a personal relationship with their lawyer, and that they've got a good lawyer. And they should feel that way, ideally. But to make people in your city, in your community, feel that way, they've got to know you, which means you've got to get out there and network and introduce yourself to people, so that you can build that. And that's what I wish we could do is find more people, more attorneys that would be willing to do that, that understand they've got to go to the local networking groups and get out there and shake hands and buy people drinks at bars, and there's a whole business side to this.
Well, if you are an attorney and you are in the Florida area or you're looking to move to the Florida area, I've got a guy who is looking to grow his practice. So if you're interested in real estate law, why don't you reach out to Justin and I'll get a finder's fee, right? Is that how that works?
Absolutely, sure.
Headhunter's fee. That's fine. No, so okay, question number two. We go back in time and we meet young Justin, maybe fresh out of law school. And again, without breaking the space-time continuum, you're able to give yourself just maybe a couple of quick words of advice. What advice would you give to yourself at the beginning of your career?
Um, well, I would say get that trial experience, get that courtroom experience, which I did. I did, I didn't do it intentionally. It was more like something that I fell into by accident. But I tell any young lawyer now, a year spent working for the state attorney's office or the public defender's office, wherever you happen to be, it's, they're not going to pay you a lot of money, but the dues that you're paying there are going to come back and help you in the future. There's statistics out there that say something like less than 10% of all lawyers total in the United States ever go to court. So you want to be one of the ones that can go to court. And
Hmm.
I've made sure that because we don't do a lot of trial work in the real estate realm, and most of what we call trials are not really trials, they're more glorified hearings. But I keep myself involved in litigation because I don't ever want to lose that. It's sort of like the difference between being a general practice doctor versus being a surgeon. If you can perform surgery, you want to make sure that you can continue to do that. So for young lawyers out there, and I did, again, I did do it. That's the advice I'd give myself and any young attorney is make sure that you get that courtroom experience early in your career.
That's good advice and very practical. So if you're out there and you're just fresh out of law school yourself, don't be afraid of trial work. That's awesome. I like that concept a lot. All right, so question number three. This is my miraculous pen. Now, this one is from St. Benedict's Abbey in Atchison, Kansas. I'm going to give them a free shout out. It is a Catholic monastery of Benedictine monks. Now, one of the monks must have blessed this pen because it seems to have a miraculous ability to strike laws from the books, edit laws that are on the books, or alter a law or add a new law to the book. So if I were to give you my miraculous pen from kansasmonks.org, and you're able to use this miraculous pen to make a change, what change would you make in the law? Now, this can be a major change with sweeping statewide or national or even international ramifications when it comes to real estate law. It could just be getting rid of traffic tickets. What or parking tickets. What law would you change if I gave you this pen and why, Justin?
Um, well, I referenced it earlier, but I would have the entirety of the nation, all the states, follow the lead of what half of our states have already done. I would outlaw insurance title companies that are not law firms from handling real estate transactions. I think they're engaging in unlicensed practice of law to the point that I think it's almost a bit of a scam. People don't understand. The people that are coming into these transactions, they don't understand all the technicalities of what's going on. They don't understand what has to happen,
Right.
what should happen, what best practices are. And they don't understand that, once you're under contract and oops, your seller is not actually entitled because there needs to be a probate. And they thought that just because mom and dad died, that now the property is theirs, they could convey it. But that wasn't caught early in the process. But you're closing in a title company and they can't do a probate because they're not lawyers. I wish they would do away with them. I think it's a I would never advise a friend to do a closing at a title company, and that's not a plug for my firm. Go use whatever firm you want to. But if I could say one thing to every home buyer in America out there would be don't do your real estate closings at a title company. Use a reputable law firm that understands not only what should be happening, but can solve the infinite number of problems that come up and can derail your transaction.
I think that's sound advice personally. So that's awesome. Well, Justin, again, thank you so much for meeting with me and my listeners today. I've really appreciated the time and the wisdom that you've had to share with us. Are there any last words of wisdom or parting thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Uh, I can't think of anything other than I would just say to anyone that doesn't. I know that it's a tough time to acquire real estate right now. All around the country, prices are high. Interest rates are high. There is not as many. There's not as many buyers in the market right now because it is such a tough time to buy. But I would encourage everyone to get on the property ladder. Um, in the United States, the number one way that people can accrue wealth is through the purchase and ownership of real estate. They're not making more land. While there may be some ups and downs in the value of your real estate property over the course of your life, over the long term, it just continuously goes up. So, when you're renting, you're just giving 100% of your money to your landlord. At least when you own a home, you're building equity, you're making an investment there, and everyone should or to own real estate as quickly as they can in their life, and always own their own property.
I think that's sound advice. I feel lucky that we bought when we did. I think our house has already gone up almost like 70% in value, which is just crazy. And
Yeah.
we got in like I don't think I could afford it today, but we got in right before everything shot up. It was right in the heart of the COVID era and everything else. So all righty. Well, Justin, thank you very much for again taking the time to talk with me and my listeners today. This has been the Attorney Post. I am, as always, your host, Justin West. I have been chatting with Justin Givens, a guy with an amazing first name, and he's on the masthead down there again at Anderson Givens Fredericks. You can visit him online at andersongivens.com. As always, though this podcast does talk about all sorts of legal issues, it does not itself constitute legal advice. And if you have a legal issue, you should always seek the advice of a competent attorney in the area that you're in who focuses on the matter that you need help with. However, I can say if you live anywhere in the Florida area, you need someone that specializes in real estate law in particular, dealing with HOAs, etc. I think Justin and his firm would be an amazing resource for you. So again, please use their links down below. As far as the podcast goes, we always appreciate if you're on YouTube, give us a like, a subscribe, and a share. Comment down below whatever you learned on this. If you're on any of the other podcast repositories as well, give us a rating, etc. But the number one thing you can do to help us grow this podcast is simply this. If you know somebody who would benefit from the knowledge that is covered in this podcast, particularly someone who's looking into real estate in Florida for this particular issue, share this episode with them. Help them get the knowledge that they need to move forward. Because as I always say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Until next time, again, I'm your host, Justin. Thank you guys for listening, and bye-bye.